Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Aquarian Radio at aquarianradio.com, and this is an episode of Experiencers Network, and I am your host, Janet Care Lessin, with my co-host, Karen Christine Patrick. Karen, are you anywhere near the bio on the computer, or you could read the bio? If not, I will do it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not near that. I apologize.
Okay, then I will read the bio, and our guest is Sherry Wilde. And Sherry was living an idyllic life as a wife, mother, and business owner until 1987, when her community experienced a UFO flap that was considered one of the most active in the world. No one could have ever guessed the unbelievable turn of events that would occur over the next 18 to 24 months, as Sherry was forced to accept her involvement in a phenomenon that was totally unknown to her. Faced with the indisputable evidence that she was experiencing contact with extraterrestrial beings, she was astonished to this pragmatic and astonishing to this pragmatic and level-headed woman of 37, but to learn her contact had been ongoing for her entire life almost pushed her over the edge. It would have pushed me over the edge. Sherry spent the next several years of her life trying to exonerate the experiences from her mind and did her best to return to a normal life. But when heavy contact started again in late 2009, after several years of relative peace, she could no longer ignore it. Inexplicably, she found herself writing a book about the encounters as her memory opened up to the past events and the teachings these beings had imparted to her. Overcoming her fear and learning the truth of her involvement with these ultra-dimensional beings became her life goal. She now accepts the truth of these encounters and has cooperative contact on a regular basis with the beings she affectionately refers to as her guides. So we have a very extensive bio on the website, aquarianradio.com, along with pictures of Sherry, and there's a couple of drawings I found on the internet that she can explain. And before I bring on Sherry, Karen, is there anything that you want to say about who you are and anything you want our audience to know before we bring on Sherry Wilde?
Oh, I'm just glad to be back on with you Friday. I've been on hiatus for quite a while, most definitely moving from one part of New Mexico to another part of New Mexico. I love it here. And I like to tell people I just came back from Mars because the part of New Mexico I was at was the flat desert, and now I'm kind of in a hilly area with trees, and found a community of other contactees and experiencers, and it's just been wonderful to be here in this community, and looking forward to talking to our guests. So thank you.
That's wonderful. I find that's happening everywhere. I was at a birthday party last night. These were New Age people, but they weren't, really into the UFO contactee experiencer lore. But my husband and I felt comfortable enough to talk to several people, and then they were saying, yes, I've had experiences as well. And the one woman said, I have hybrid children, and I never knew this part of these people's lives. I've known some of them over 20 years. So it was really an eye-opener when one becomes open about the contactee experiencer phenomenon and feels comfortable enough to talk about it, and you start talking about it, you get other people saying, me too. So that was very refreshing for me last night to have that experience. Okay, so Sherry Wilde. Oops, I got to put on your mic. Okay, 1 second as it turns on. Jerry, you and I and Dr. Lessin, we all met each other in Toronto, or the Toronto area. I think it was in 2016 at a conference there. So how are you doing? It's been a long time since we've talked face-to-face.
It has been, yeah. I was trying to remember when that was. That was in Canada, wasn't it, that we were at the same conference, the Experiencers Conference or something, I think?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I was pretty sick when I was up there. I remember that.
Yeah, I remember
so,
you were feeling well. How are you doing now?
Much better. I'm getting a little bit stronger every day, and I'm way better than I was. I was probably just about at my worst when I was up there. But I've been doing a lot of cleansing to get the poison out of my body, and I'm still doing that now. Even constantly doing that, trying to get out the last remnants of the poison, and just making sure that I'm eating clean and getting lots of sunshine and walking, exercise. I'm able to walk again. I wasn't able to walk for a while. So I'm slowly coming back, making my way back. So I'm happy with that.
Yes, and then we saw, I don't know what year it was, we saw each other at Contact in the Desert one year, but it wasn't this past, it was the year before.
I think so, because last year I had to cancel. I was too sick to go out for it. So yeah, so it's good. It's getting better. Definitely getting better. I didn't think I would come this far back from it. To tell you the truth, I just thought I would continue to deteriorate. But I'm happy. Yeah, I've had lots and lots of help. I've had people doing healing on me. I've had some phenomenal healing experiences, and then people who help me with recommending. I mean, it's just been miracle after miracle. People show up at just the right time and make a recommendation, and I just know that I'm meant to follow that advice, and so I do. And I mean, it's been amazing. It's just been amazing. So, there's always some good that comes out of everything. So yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I'm gonna sneeze. Hold on. Don't you hate you get that sensation you're going to sneeze? So what I would like, this is a whole new audience, and this is going to end up on about 10 different platforms and up on YouTube. So this is kind of a historical record. I know you've said this over and over, but if we can do some of what your story is, and we'll recommend everybody buys the book and read it. I have a copy I'm reading. I always give it to my husband first because he wants to read everything first. So I said, okay, give it to me when you're done. But you have a very interesting story. Would you like to start and tell our listening audience your story? And then after about 15 minutes or so, Karen and I will probably be waving our little invisible hands that you can't see. So if you get to a point where you want to ask us, do you have any questions or feedback, then that'll make it flow really smooth. And then we can go on to the next part, okay? Does that work for you?
Sure,
excellent.
Sure.
Okay, so, take it away.
Okay, my story. Well, I guess I will start with the story that the encounter that I had that opened the door to my memories, and that occurred when I was 17 years old. And if anybody's heard me talk before, they've heard this story. I've told it a million times. So I was 17 years old, and I was going over to my girlfriend's house. We were going to go shopping together. The thing of it is that I didn't know I was going to leave to go over to meet with her until the last minute, because my parents owned a motel, and my job was to clean the rooms. And I didn't think my mother would let me take the day off, but she gave me the day off after I was done doing a couple rooms. She told me I could leave and head over to my girlfriend Vicky's house. So I'm heading over to her house. She lived about 15 minutes away, and I'm about 5 minutes away from her place. I was supposed to be there by 10 o'clock. We had an arrangement that we made. I would be there by 10 in the morning, and if I wasn't there by 10 o'clock, then they should just go without me, because I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be able to go. But I was going to make it there by 10 o'clock. And I'm driving along a straightaway, and all of a sudden I was driving a little Beetle, a VW Beetle bug car, and it just stopped. The motor just went dead on it, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I did all the things I knew to do. I put the clutch in, and I did this thing they call pop the clutch, and that didn't work. And I tried turning the key in the ignition. That didn't work. And right about this time, at the same time, I see these guys standing in the road up ahead of me. There were 3 or 4 of them. I think were there 4 of them, I think? I can't remember now. And I thought that was strange, but I didn't pay a lot of attention until my car started to slow down considerably. I was going up a little incline. And I noticed one of the men stepped out into my lane of traffic. I thought that was really a strange thing for him to do, and I was nervous about it because my car was going to stop if I couldn't get it started pretty soon, and it didn't look like it was going to start. And he was standing right in my lane of traffic. And then I saw him put his hand up as if telling me to stop, which was fine. My car actually just rolled to a stop right at his feet. I realized that he was not human. And when he said these words to me, he said my name. He said, "Sherry, we've been waiting for you." And that just terrified me. Somehow I had the presence of mind. I rolled up my window because I had it down partway. I rolled up my window and I reached over. I locked both doors. And then I put my hands on the steering wheel, crossing each other on the steering wheel, and I put my head down on my arms because I didn't want to look at them. I was so scared. I didn't know what else to do. I was trapped. And he kept talking to me, telling me to look at him. And I just was shaking. I was just terrified. And eventually I felt something brush against my forearm, and I opened my eyes to see this grayish tan claw thing come across, and it wrapped its long fingers around my right forearm. And then another hand came in and wrapped around my other arm, and they pulled me out of the car. I had been shaking, just shaking like a leaf, and as soon as they touched me, at least that stopped. I stopped shaking, and I calmed down immediately. They pulled me out of the car, and I'm standing there, and they got these 2 little guys standing on each side of me with their vice-like grip a hold of me. And the guy who had been standing out in front of my car started talking to me. And we had a conversation, and I remember studying him and looking at him and taking it all in and feeling like I knew him. I felt like I knew his voice more than anything. And then all of a sudden he says, "Okay, we have work to do. There's work to be done." That's what he said. And he turned quickly and he walked away really fast. And I turned to see where he was walking to, where he was going, and I saw this beautiful silver ship, just like out of a movie. It was sitting out in the field, and that's where he was going. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it's like a part of me remembered, and I knew what was going to happen. And I didn't want to, I loved the ship. I wanted to stand there and look at it, but I didn't want to go over and go into it. I knew I was going to have to. The 2 guys on each side of me started walking, and I tried to walk fast to keep up with them, but I couldn't keep up with them, and eventually I just gave up and let them drag me. They dragged me across the field. As we got closer to the ship, I noticed another human was standing there, a woman. She was wearing kind of a long, loose-fitting dress of some sort, just kind of baggy. It hung on her. And as we got closer and closer, I realized that she wasn't human, and she looked really familiar to me. And she helped me up into the ship. She told me I had to go on board, and I went up into the ship, and it was a steep steps to get, not even steps, it was like a ramp to get up into it. I go into the ship, and of course it's very cold in the ships. It's always cold in the ships, and I start to shake again. And she kind of like maneuvered me into this room, this little room. It was where they pilot the ship. And she took me in there, and she helped me to get undressed. And I resisted, and she told me there was no sense in resisting, that I knew that I had to go through this physical. Had to go out and lay on that little cold slab of a table, which I did. And by this time, the other guys were in the ship, and the main guy, he proceeded to do a physical on me, and he talked to me all the while he was doing that, and he eventually harvested my eggs, which really upset me, and I protested that, but he explained to me that it was okay, and they eventually got done.
They were harvesting eggs. What did they do?
To me, all the while he was walking around the table doing things, and he would tell me what he was doing. He did a scraping on my arms, and he said, "I'm taking some of your cells." He would just explain, just in a quiet voice. He was just talking as to what he was doing. And then at one point, he reached up above him. It was just like in a surgical room where they have the lights up above, and they have sometimes instruments. It was up above this long needle type thing, and he reached up and he pulled that down, and then he told me that that's what he was going to do. He said, "I'm going to extract some of your eggs," and he said, "It won't hurt. You won't feel anything at all." And that's when I lost it, and he got very concerned, and he wanted to know why was I so upset about this, and I said, because I wanted to have children. And he said, "You will have children." And he explained to me that my body would make more eggs. Now, somebody called me on that recently. They said, "Actually, our body doesn't make more eggs." And I said, "Well, that's what he told me, and that's all I know." Well, I went online after that, and it has just been recently apparently discovered that our body does produce more eggs. And so it was something that, he knew that back then. So I guess
he took the needle. Did he put it? Where did he insert it into your body?
Down right. It looked like it went in right to the to the lower right, maybe, of my belly button, my navel. Okay. That's where it went. But and he was right. I felt a little pressure, but I didn't feel any pain. I watched this substance go up through it was a clear plastic tube, and I watched it go up through there. When he did it, the other other 3 little guys who were with him were all busy doing things in the ship, and they were kind of scurrying around doing stuff. And when he did that procedure, they stopped, and there was like an air of expectation. You could just feel it. And they went back into the hallway, the 3 little guys. I was in this main big room when you first come into the ship. They went back into the hallway, and I couldn't see because the table was set off center of the room I was in, and so I couldn't see what they were looking at. They were facing the wall to my left, and I could see the wall going down the hallway. And to the right, there were what appeared to be windows or monitors of some sort. So I figured they had the same thing that they were looking at. They must have been looking at some kind of a monitor. So they stood there, the 3 of them stood looking at that. And the main guy who extracted the eggs, he was clicking away on what I now know is a computer. Back then it was 1968 when this happened, and we didn't have computers then, but he was doing something with something that had like a TV. It looked like a TV screen to me.
In terms of what I know is that, so he went to the one side. That was probably the side where you were ovulating that month. So they knew your cycle. Did they ever extract a baby?
No.
So they weren't impregnating you and taking the babies. They were just taking your eggs directly.
They were taking my eggs directly, and they have lots and lots of them. I have lots of hybrid children, and they have lots of eggs in storage from me. They took tons of eggs from me, But I never, to my knowledge, was pregnant and went through that. I never was aware of that happening.
Well, they used to, I think they would, take the material, the admixture of the egg, and it would also include material from other. It wasn't just 2 parents. It wasn't just me out on the bed. It could be a mixture of DNA from different species and whatever. And they would put that in, but they would never let me miss a period. They would come back and extract it. And I'm missing the piece on how they extracted it, but I knew they were doing it. So they blocked where they were getting it, if they were going vaginally or through the. I don't know. It was very tiny. If I had even period. So that was one question I had. So yours was, but the same thing I have. I mean, literally, we could have millions because they can make.
I know.
It was very. I know. One of my girlfriends who was aware of what was going on, she said, it was like a psychic hit. She goes, I said, I wonder how many kids I have. Do I have 3 or 4? She says, no, you have a whole village up there. It's like, what?
Yeah.
But you put in the same program. Now, did they tell you which species you were being combined with, or?
Human to human, for the most part, with enhancements of, the ET enhancements that they wanted to do. But I was part of the program that was human to human because it was to reseed a planet, because it was thought, the timeline at that time showed that the planet was going to be washed clear of humanity, that Earth was going to go through the ascension, but humanity was not going to make it at that time. So we were concerned with preserving the human biological entity. So that's why I volunteered for the hybrid program to, so that we would have for reseeding a new planet with the humans so they could continue on with their journey. So I was mostly
part of human to human plus the Anunnaki. Hold on one second. My husband's going to make noise.
Okay.
Were enhancing me with some Anunnaki or tall white. It was all this type of humanoid species. It wasn't. I'm not. They told me very clear. You're not in the gray program. You're in the human and Anunnaki program, which was not short. So it was. They were. My children are much taller than I am, and they were getting sperm. Like I started experimenting with sex at a young age. Not that I'm proud of, but I realized that it was kind of like I was being pushed in that direction on the subconscious level. And and I said, what's that all about? Why? That's not my moral standards. I didn't have a lot of partners, but I did have more that made me comfortable, because I thought I'd be married for my whole life with one partner. And they said, you need to diversify the sperm, and we're retrieving it from inside your vaginal.
Really?
That's the best.
Oh.
Yes.
Huh.
And then they were used, and so all my lovers that I've had in the world, you guys have hybrid children probably. So anyway,
that's how they did. They didn't do that with me. They just took my ova and they mixed it on the ship, and created. I have 47 children, but I do have one of mine is an ET to human. I mean, there was one that I met that was. So apparently they didn't. At least one time they didn't do human to human, but for the most part they did. So,
I'm pretty sure they whatever they damn well please once they have your DNA. So it doesn't matter. It's fine, whatever they mixed it with, but they did convey that information. And I have one more question, and I'll go back to your story. How many fingers did it was the gray type species have?
That's a good question. My memory is getting foggier and foggier the further I distance myself from when I wrote the book, when all the recall came back. I believe and I'd have to check the book to see. I think I have it in the book. I think they had 5. 5. They were very long. No, I'm going to recant that. I'm going to say 4. I think it was 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had 4. They didn't have 3. I know that. It was 4. Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah, I had 4. They had 3 fingers and like an opposing thumb, and they were very, very long. And mine, the ones that were touching me, they were kind of bulbous at the end. It was like round at the end.
Yes, I remember that. Yep.
All right.
Very long. They could wrap it all the way around. I mean, I should know this by memory because I've had those finger bruises. Did you ever get those? Because they wrap their fingers around you so tight, and you get those 4 prints on you, like 3 very strong. Yeah, those fingerprint bruises on your forearm or wherever it is that they're grabbing you. So.
Yeah, I remember looking down, and they were carrying me like a surfboard, and I just remember the hands, the fingers wrapping it all the way around. I could never quite describe how they could wrap it. It's like, oh.
Yeah, it does. They wrap all the way around like that. And so there's very long fingers. Yeah, very long. Yeah, they're really weird looking people. That's for sure. He doesn't like me saying that. First of all, he explains that that's not his real form. That's just a container that he wears because he's actually an etheric being. And then second of all, he goes to me once. He said to me, because I was on Veritas Radio with Mel Fabregas, and Mel said, well, if they scare you so much, Sherry, when they come to get you, and that's only a container, why don't they put on a human body so they don't scare you so much? And I said, that's a great question. And he said, well, why don't you ask them that? And I said, I'm gonna. So I did. And I said, why don't you do it? And I went through all that. And he said, well, because they use this, what they call the Zeta suit. He said a lot of us use those because it's highly functional, is what he said. And he said it works really well and it's simple. The human body is too complex and it's not as easy and it wouldn't work as well and blah, blah, blah. And then he looks at me and he goes, so I scare you, huh? And I said, yeah, you do. I'm always scared. The first time I see you, I'm always scared at first. And he goes, well, Sherry, have you ever looked in a mirror? And I said, excuse me? And he said, have you ever looked in the mirror? And I said, well, what are you getting at? And he goes, well, when you do that thing that you call smile, he said, it looks like you're going to eat us. He said, that terrifies us. So it's like, okay, I get you. Point well taken. It's all in the eyes of the, beholder. So, but anyway, So back to my story.
To that, and then we'll go back to the story. So one time I was at a meeting with 100,000 individual species, but they were all within the humanoid race. So they were testing me over time to see, how open-minded I could get, where I wouldn't be afraid of things,
Oh,
and
really?
so they kept into more and more species, and then they pulled me in front of this whole, like the United Nations of like at the UN, but it was there were no two species alike, and I asked them how much. 100,000, and they're all unique. There's no two representatives of the same species. They're all from all different planets. And then they said, well, you think that's something? That's only a teeny tiny representation of the species in the cosmos. But these are the ones that you could be in front of and not be terrified. Hold on, I got to close the door. The storm is coming. Keep talking.
Me keep talking? Okay, I'll go back to my story. So, where was I? Okay, he extracted the eggs from me, and then the exam was over, and I was allowed to get dressed. And by this time, I was feeling really comfortable. He asked me if I had any questions. Well, first of all, he asked me if he could ask me some questions, and I said sure. And his first question to me, and this has always been interesting to me because it is always his first question to me when he gets me on the ship. He always wants to know, Sherry, are you happy? And I thought that was just a really weird question, but that's what he asked me. And we talked. He asked me a lot of things about the Vietnam War and about our president and just all kinds of different things. Wanted to know if I was still a virgin. He asked me that, I remember. And they were very protective of that aspect of my life, for sure. And I was thinking the other day, for some reason I started thinking about this when I was out. I was dating the man who eventually was going to be my husband, and I was young. We started seeing each other when I was about 18, I think, and we got married at 19. So, yeah, I would have been dating him. We went parking one night on a back road, and I think they were afraid things were going to get out of hand because they showed up, and this guy in a cape and a hooded cape. I remember my future husband saw him out of the window, out the back window, and just terrified. He never got over that because he was walking very quickly toward the car, and I think he was going to. Well, his whole intention was to interrupt what we were, where we were headed. Right. I think So anyway.
That's interesting. I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is these are triggering things for me. So one time I had a very a dark-skinned lover of a different race, human race, and they said it all. This is I was in my 40s and I was still producing eggs, they took me and I said, what's going on? It was something about they wanted to choose and it sounds racist, and it makes me it really upset me, and because I really like this man, and it's like, why are you bothering me? But I was part of a certain breeding program, and they only wanted me to be breeding with certain people that looked a certain way, or it was like they selected. Huh. And I remember, what was her name in the 60s, the psychic in the 60s to Reagan.
Sylvia Brown? Or was that her name? Sylvia Brown?
Jane Dixon. She announced on
yes.
When I was going to school, we had those little transistor radios, right? And there was an announcement that said, Jane Dixon says that the children are being taken up on UFOs, and they're being matched with other children for this breeding program. And that just kind of registered in the back of my mind. I thought it was very interesting that Jane Dixon was talking about, children being abducted. So then years later, I'm in Honolulu, and I found a picture. I was looking through my boyfriend's pictures, and then I saw a picture of him as a child, and I just dropped it. I went, oh my God, I saw that child. I know that child. We were out together, like, so it was some kind of matchmaking, and here we are making love. Now, I knew when I finally got married I was still a virgin, so I knew I hadn't they hadn't done that part, but, they let you get close, but they don't let you copulate, right? And then another, year later, there was a second person. I broke up with that person. I was with a new partner. The same thing happened when I was looking through his pictures. I went, wow, they matched me up with this one too, because I knew those little boys. I had seen them. It was like they were, it was like that. Once you see a picture, then all of a sudden you're there, right? You see a picture, and then it's, oh, I'm there, and I was back on the ship, and all the memories flooded in. And I remember, hanging out with this kid and talking to him, and it's like, wow. So they had picked out for me that they wanted me to be with. It may not have been race, but it was certain people they wanted me to be with.
Yeah, that's true. So, that's true. They have dictated. They did the same thing in my life. They dictated who I would marry, and when I would get pregnant. Absolutely insisted on the exact night and time. Very insistent that night that I get pregnant, and it didn't make any sense. We were so young when we got married. I never wanted to get married that young, but when you come in as part of a volunteer program like this, you don't really have any choice. And it's hard to explain because people don't understand how somebody can take over your life, but the influences are very strong. And now I was just the opposite. Now they told me after my marriage ended, which it came undone during this whole recognition that I was part of this whole program, and it was too hard on my husband and put the strain on our marriage. But the marriage was ending anyway of its own accord. But it was time, and it was all part of the plan. So I spent most of my adult life single, which I really enjoyed and really liked. But they told me every time they picked out who I was going to be involved with. And at one point, they told me I was now going to be dating only black men. And and I thought that was really strange. And I said, why? I said, why are you telling me that? I said, what? I don't get that. And they just said, they didn't say anything. They just said, it's just time. And I did. I dated exclusively black men for about 3 years or so. And I tell you, that was really educational for me. I mean, I grew up in rural Wisconsin and didn't really have much exposure, to that sort of, to interracial dating. Didn't have any black kids go to my school or anything like that. And so it was quite eye-opening. I dated some wonderful men and learned a lot from them. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about prejudice and the way people will look at you sometimes. And, so it was pretty interesting because, they definitely were in charge of they're very much in charge of my love life, totally in charge of it. They tell me, I'm just told, and it just goes the way that it goes. But people don't get that.
That correlates with my information too. So it was the opposite. I started with I guess it was the timing. So I met my first boyfriend. He pursued me, he was 12 years old and I was 13. And I said, I don't want to have sex at this young age. And we played sexually. I really didn't have like full-on lovemaking, but there was still, sexual play. But then they directed, it was like I had no break in between. I would go from one relationship to another.
I know.
And I was
I know.
that
Me
cute.
too.
But it was like, it was just, the whole thing was orchestrated. And it was like, it was different nationalities. So the first one was the blonde, blue-eyed, right? And then the next one was Italian. And then, so when I was 18, I had this dream, and it said, you are to make love with at least one of every race, every human race in your lifetime. I went, wow. And so, like you said, it was about racism. It was like moving past that. But it was definitely in their timing. So when I, the young man that I was making love with was a very dark-skinned Mexican, Mayan, Incan. He was a very magical person, very, very spiritual. And and then we made love. I felt like I got pregnant. Now, they never let me have a live birth. Never. And then they took it. And then we did it again next month, and I got pregnant. They took it, and they were so upset with me. Anyway, I won't go into what happened after that. But I'm a rebel, and I always say, and then I do what I want within it. But who knows what I want? Maybe it's all just to get me to go in the direction that they want me to go, and they're manipulating me, and it's not really my free will. Who knows? But there's definitely this is the first person I talked to that you were orchestrated into your relationships.
Yeah, I was. They told me. The little bit I know about it is that they told me at the time of when I was going through my divorce, they told me we're going to be studying the different human, the love. They're going to be studying the love relationships, and they're going to be studying, there's family love, and then there's the romantic love. And they said we're going to be watching now the romantic love and how it evolves and all that. And they just, so that's how it went. I just had a series of relationships, and it was very pleasant. They were all really great guys, but it's like I wasn't allowed to spend more than like usually 3 years, 2.5, 3 years maybe or so with most of these guys, and I could have been very happy to spend my entire life with probably any of them because they were just all really great men, but I just kept having to go on to the next one, and I tell you, it was confusing to me because there was one guy in particular that I really wanted to marry and settle down with, and I just wasn't allowed to, and it caused such conflict in me because I was being pushed to end the relationship, and it was pretty bad. It was hard on him. It was hard on me. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know. What I would say to him was that I remember saying to him, I know that I love you deep down inside, but I can't seem to get to that. I can't seem to access that love. It's like it's out of reach for me. And because I can't access it, we need to end the relationship. And it was a stupid reason, but I didn't know how else to put it. And when I look back on it now that I have clear understanding of what my life was about, it makes sense. I did love him, but I wasn't allowed to feel that or, to any great length and actually keep our relationship intact. So I don't know. It's a different life that we live, and if people listening to this, it might sound really too bizarre. It might be too far over the edge for them, or depending on their own experiences. But that's how it went for me, and it was strange. They protected certain parts. I mean, I definitely was meant to stay a virgin until I got married, and they were very protective of that aspect of my life. And
that is so interesting.
Yeah.
And then finally, so for me, they wanted me to be married.
Yeah, the opposite. Oh, it sounds like they wanted you to. I mean, you started at such a young age, and I was just the opposite. They kept me very sheltered and protected. I mean, to the point where I remember once. I mean, we're really getting off on something different here, but I've never shared any of this, I don't think, with anybody. But this is just one example of how they kept me sheltered. I remember being in high school. I think I was a sophomore or junior, and in the library, and some classmates, some boys, they were passing around a Polaroid picture. Well, they had like boys do, and how they can be so mean. They had taken a guy, a classmate, and they had held him down, and they had taken a picture of a certain part of his body. They took his clothes off, and they were passing that picture around. Well, I was very naive and innocent. That picture came around to me, and I had no clue what I was looking at. Well, it was totally scrambled. They did not even want me seeing that. They wanted me being very, very innocent. So, I mean, that's just one example. I mean, there were other times, too, where I was blocked, and I was not allowed to know or see or do too much. So it was very strange, very strange. Why they were like that, I don't know.
Yeah, and it is a puzzle, and it wasn't. I mean, I was supposed to be good. I was supposed to be the good girl. So even within that, they gave me that you're in love, and so there I was, 13, and I was in love, and the whole thing was like, this is going to be your partner for the rest of your life. But there was a part of me. It was like an experiment, and it's like, I can't marry the boy I met at 13. Yeah. That will be my only relationship for the rest of my life. And so, but they allowed me to break up with him because their ultimate experiment was having all this different DNA that they would mix and match at easy disposal. They didn't have to go abduct these people and have, that work for them. I was doing the work for them. I was taking on a new partner.
Well, I mean, I've come to the. I think I get peace of mind by understanding. There's a duality that's happening. There's an aspect of me that's there on the ship with them. I mean, do you feel that too, Janet? That actually, so it's not really. I mean, I want to change the terminology a little bit here because otherwise it kind of puts us in the role of victim. I mean, it's really an aspect of ourselves on the ship because we volunteered to come, or at least in my understanding, so I won't speak for you, but in my understanding of what I know to be true for me, I volunteered to come here. That's my family. It was all laid out ahead of time how this was going to play out. And so if it's not another aspect of me, at least it's my family who's there helping to guide and make my life go the way that I understood and agreed to have it go before I came here. So none of this is really going against my will. It's just that we're behind the veil and I don't remember, all of the agreements, but more and more I'm starting to remember them. And this is one of them that I had, was that this is how my life was going to go. And to be part of this program,
agree.
So it takes the idea of being a victim out. I don't like the idea of portraying myself as a victim because I'm not. So I'm not. I came in here. See, I don't have the same bias and prejudice and that most people. I don't think that humanity is really monogamous, no matter what your moral structure is, because when you look at the hospitals, 1 out of 3 is the family that the father that's listed on the birth certificate. And if we were really monogamous, we would be like some of the animal species that mate for life. But there's only a few, very few on this whole planet, animal species that mate for life. So it's a rarity, not the norm. So humanity is very much the same. So no, I am aware there's a book out by Susie Hansen about the dual soul connection. And I have many species that I'm connected to, and I simultaneously exist on many, planets and spheres and dimensions. The whole thing, I've come to that awareness, and I'm not unique. Any one of us, any one of you listening out there, could come to the awareness of your multidimensional self and where you're existing. I'm also in the past and I'm in the future, because time's an illusion. Yeah. Right. Okay, back to you. This is fascinating. Thanks for going a little bit outside of your box because this is what we do. We connect the dots and we get the bigger and bigger picture every show we do. So go ahead. Right. Thank you. Okay. Yes. So he asked me a bunch of questions and things, and then he wanted to know if I had questions. And my first question to him was, can I go for a ride in the ship again? I wanted to be taken up. I loved going up on the ship, and I always ask for that. And he just smiled and said that, not now, but we'll be by to pick you up very soon, which they did. Probably 2 nights later, they picked me up in one of the big ships. The ship I was in that day with them. It was a little scout ship, and but they came back for me at my girlfriend's house. I was actually spending the night, and they came and picked me up and took me. But anyway, we talked for a while, and then I remember him saying that, okay, we've kept you too long. You're probably going to get sick. And he motioned to one of the guys, the other little guys, to bring over this drink, which they did. And I drank down that whole concoction because I knew, a part of me knew what it was going to be like if I couldn't treat it. I was going to get like flu-like symptoms. And I tell you, I actually did get sick later that day. I ended up going into the city with my girlfriend, and I couldn't go shopping. I ended up laying in the car all afternoon because I was nauseous and sick because the difference in our frequencies, And so I have learned that if I stay for more than an hour and 40 or hour and 45 minutes with them on the ship like that, I will get sick. If I go with them in the big ship, if we go out in if we go on the rendezvous ships or any of the mothership or any of the big ships, that's a different story. I can be with them forever on that, and I won't get sick because it's more acclimated for some reason, or I acclimate to it or something. I don't know what the difference is, but I don't get sick on that. But anyway, so it was time for me to leave. I'd been there for 2 hours, and we walked out of the ship, and he was walking me back to my car. And as we walked back to the car, he said, now, as usual, Sherry, we're going to wipe your memory clean. You won't remember any of this. And I just stopped. He was walking real fast. I was kind of running to keep up with him. And I just stopped dead. And he took, he went a little ways before he realized I wasn't next to him. And he turned around and he said, and he just looked at me. And he said, what's wrong, or what's the problem or something? And I said, stop doing that. And he said, what? And I said, stop wiping my memory. I said, I want to remember this. And so we got into a little thing about that. He was amused by it. He didn't argue with me. They don't argue. But he was amused by my saying that I was going to remember. And I just got into the car when he put me in the car, and he said, okay, you're going to start forgetting now. And I said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. So as I pulled away, I felt the memory start to fall apart in my mind. I mean, just big chunks of it were dropping away to where I couldn't remember. I was confused all of a sudden, and I thought, what am I doing? Where am I going? And then what was I just doing now? And who was I talking to? And I turned around and I looked, and I could still see the ship sitting there, but I couldn't see him. And that's when I realized he was wiping my memory. I mean, it was disappearing. So I just I just started repeating to myself, I think I said Martians or little men or something like that, and I just repeated that all the way to our girlfriend's house, even though I'd forget, and I'd be like, why am I saying that? And then I'd be like, oh, yeah, now I remember, and then I'd start saying it again. So when I walked into her house, the first thing I noticed when I walked in was the clock straight up noon, and she came running down the stairs, my girlfriend Vicki, and she yelled at me, and she said, where have you been? She said, you're just lucky that the cows got out. We only just now got them in. Otherwise, we would have left without you. And so they had a 2-hour delay. And that's when I said to her, I said Martians or little spacemen and spaceship or something. And I was able to remember. And I asked her to come back with me to meet him. And she just laughed like a nervous laugh. And I didn't remember saying that. She remembered it years later when they investigated my case. And she told them that I had said that, and I was fascinated by that because when she said it, then I started to put the pieces together. She remembered a lot of my experiences that I didn't remember because I was blocked, but she recalled me many times, coming back into bed in the middle of the night after disappearing, or telling her that they were coming for me and she should try to, help protect me and things like that I didn't have any recall of any of that. So
wow.
That was one night, Janet. It was really interesting because I was just as fascinated as anybody when she met with Don Schmidt, who was my investigator, and he was talking to her and asking her different questions. She offered up this one time when we were babysitting her nephew, and we were together, and all of a sudden, I guess, we were watching Johnny Carson, and all of a sudden I jumped up and I said, Vicki, you have to hide me. I said, they're coming for me. She said, who? And she said, I looked bewildered, and I said, I don't know, but they're coming. You need to protect me. And I started running frantically through the house. It was an itty-bitty little house, so there was nowhere to hide.
Oh.
And we ended up, went into her sister's bedroom, into the bed, and I put Vicki in front of me, and I was pressed up against the wall. And we both started to hear that sound, that vibration kind of sound, that sound when they come with the big ship. So they were there, and I knew it. And I remember thinking, they have to go through Vicki to get to me. And then at my very last thought before I blacked out was, wait a minute, I'm up against the wall. They're going to just reach in through the wall and get me, and which they did. And I was gone. Well, Vicki remembered the sound, and then she fell asleep. She just blacked out. She fell asleep. But then she woke up, and I was gone. She woke up, and she turned around, and I wasn't there. I was gone. And she made note of that, and then she fell back asleep, which is unusual. So they must have brought her up out, which they told me later that they would do that so that I would have what he calls them benchmarks. Because I'd say, why did you drop me in the pig pen that one time? Why did you do that? Why did you do this? Why did I have these little memories here and there? And he said, those are benchmarks, so that when the day came and you started to have recall of your experiences, you would have conscious recall that would validate that this really is real, because you said you're very skeptical and you don't trust in any of it. You mark it all up to dreams. And I said, yeah, I do.
Right.
It's easier that way.
So let me just say that again. So they wanted you to eventually recall and write the book.
Oh yeah. Writing the book was part of the plan from the beginning, and the book was. It came through me. It came through me. They dictated that book. I didn't have that much recall of my experiences, and I don't have great recall even now, but as the book was coming out of me, I was fascinated every day to see, the way they put it in order, to try to, because I had a friend of mine who's an author, a writer, and she interviewed me for hours and hours and hours on tape, and she was going to write my story, and she couldn't figure out how to do it, and it's cumbersome, because it spans my whole lifetime, and it's difficult. But I was fascinated by the way they did it. They made it make sense pretty much. So, yeah,
Did they do it sequentially, or did they do it through flashbacks?
They did it through sequential. It just came out of me sequentially, pretty much. And so my story, it starts from when I'm a little girl, and it kind of goes through somewhat. But then I'm as I'm telling the story, I'm actually just talking to you, and I'm telling the stories, but then I get into that moment at times. But it seems to flow. It seems to flow better than it. I couldn't have done it that way. I couldn't have come up with doing it that way. They definitely took control. Yeah, because when I wrote the book, I wasn't aware that I was writing the book until I was actually already well into it. And I came to, and I was typing away on the computer, and I was like, what the hell? It was like I woke up out of sleep, and I didn't know where I was, didn't know how I got there. I was just sitting there typing away, and I looked at the page on the computer screen, and I had never used the program Word before. I had only ever used my computer just for my work and emails and that sort of thing, and I had never been into Word before. And there I was writing, and I started to read it, and I was like, oh no, I'm not doing this. I'm not telling the story. And he said, it is time. And I said, I don't care. I'm not telling it. Yeah, and he said, it is time, Sherry. And I said, no, I'm not doing this. And he said, it is time. And you don't say no to him, you just don't. And then pretty soon I got caught up into it, and I enjoyed it. Every day, and it came out real fast. It was real easy to do. And it just came out of me. So interesting.
I want to interrupt this. It's a wonderful flow, and we'll go back to it. But poor Karen's over there waiting a spell here.
Oh no, I'm a very
Sherry.
patient person, and I've been actually enjoying myself just listening to the story. And what kind of is in my mind is that while I was off the internet, and just had my phone to just check in on things, I checked in on, what's going on in ufology and exopolitics, and as much as I could of the experiencer movement, which I think is really where my focus is. But catching up on ufology, I was struck again with how incredibly patriarchal it is, and that's a complaint. It's kind of an old boys network, and I've thought about, well, when on the experiencer side of the box, I've heard now so many stories from women who've been through the hybrid breeding, whatever this is going on program, or being accessed for our genetic material and everything. By now, working with you, Janet, we've heard a lot of stories. I've had a couple of really cool extended conversations with Gloria Hawker. I remember once interviewing Eve Lorgan from Alien Love Bite, where they in fact do sort of arrange matches. There's something not only going on, but it's really, really complex. And I think that one of the reasons why the dominant voices of ufology kind of clamp down on women is because this is the story they're most afraid of. This is the one that I think that they squelch with extreme prejudice, is how much humanity is being accessed. I'm not saying it's all just women. I know men do too, and I appreciate the men who've come forward who've said they've met their hybrid children or have had experiences. But just, hearing that, if we could get us all together, all of us ladies who've gone through this, sit down at a big, big, big coffee table, and just chat it all out, I think that we would just barely be able to look at the extent and variety of all these different ways that they're definitely following some kind of multiple DNA trails, And I've had my own experiences along those lines, too. Now, unlike you two, I am the product of one parent who's Native American Celtic background, another parent who's Native American Celtic background, so that makes me that. And all my partners have been Native American and Celtic, and I know that there's something significant to that because some of these super soldier program people have expressed this concept that there's something to that combo, that kind of boosts the psychic soldier capacity and ESP and all that stuff. So I know that thing is kind of going on just from my own, experiences and kind of looking into it. But I also think religion, I grew up very religious, and it has a tendency to be what I call DNA petri dishes, because if you can only marry the people in your own religion, that tends to keep kind of a family grouping together extensively and intermarrying and continuing some form of a DNA, combo that then they can use to look at all these different traits that humanity has, but also based on, the fact that that culturally and religiously and politically we're kept, in our communities, marrying our own kind, in a roughly the same geographical area for the most part. So I think that that's part of it, is keeping us in DNA like petri dishes. So what if we try this DNA, and what if we try that DNA? And DNA encodement, I know, also has to do with not just what color eyes you have and what other traits, but it also has to do with genetic memory. It has to do with tendencies, epigenetics. What are you able to quickly adapt to? There's a lot. I think if we use, dollars to trade, I think they use DNA code. I think that's the big, big study here, is all kinds of aspects of DNA. And from what I know of humanity, we've got quite a few of Star Nation alien races, all, in combination here on Earth. So we're kind of a big laboratory in some way. But as it plays out personally, it's really, I'm hearing what you guys are saying of who you're partnered with, and children that you have on the planet, and then I've come to realize the ones that I have off planet. I finally recalled really, really tiny born babies that were, in incubator type things, and they were smaller than the smallest preemie, and I'm like, what am I looking at? And I always thought it had to do with some other memories that I had, because my daughter was born with disability issues. She was born with birth defects, and she had to be in an incubator. But she was giant. She was like a 8-pound baby. These are just the tiniest little things, and my first inclination is to want to grab them and run away with them and get them out of that situation, and I don't know why. And I didn't really, they were just these bad dreams, And then I worked with Gloria Hawker, and she was talking about hybrid babies that she had that were super tiny. You could just hold them in your hand, and I went, oh, ding, 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 there you go. That's what they were having me look at. So the ironic thing now is my current partner and I have an interesting combination of life circumstances. I have, through whatever reasons, lost an ovary to an emergency surgery, and he lost a testicle. So who knows what they're doing with our DNA now? They're making a whole planet of us now somewhere. Wow. To kind of joke about it, but it's kind of funny, because it's not a typical thing that people run around and say. But it's like, yeah, okay, so they got both of our DNA, so we've got some kind of either spirit babies or ET babies somewhere, I think. But yeah, and I think when we talk about this, it's so great to hear your stories, Jerry, because I think there's so many women, and I love your benchmarks concept too, because it's like that's kind of how you put the puzzle together. Is like, you remember that time when that thing, and I had a very weird miscarriage that didn't make any sense, but now it makes sense to me. Is that particular fetus needed to be back wherever it came from, and then I've had such an anomaly of strange things gynecologically that, and especially who I am as a person or how I understand myself, I do actually feel like some kind of weird, Mr. Spock alien presence that's been put in a human body. I'm not real happy about it. But anyway, the whole interaction between us and these other beings is what now makes sense to me, looking at all those benchmarks and all. And I like that word. I'm gonna borrow that word if you don't mind, benchmarks, because there's these. Otherwise, they're just a clump of odd experiences, and you're like, well, what is that? And I think that's the trail of breadcrumbs that they use. Kind of what I call the experiencer path to disclosure. It's really a self-disclosure. It starts out with. I don't think that disclosure. I don't know if I believe in big D disclosure of the president standing up and telling us this is real just because half the people of America won't believe whoever party it is that stands up. But, whoever their guy is or gal, they won't believe. They'll be only half believe. So I don't think that is where we're going to get this awareness. I think it's from, and I encourage people through whatever means it takes to try to remember. Our good friend John Tooks calls it alien anesthesia. They kind of put the whammy on us, and I had one experience where they warned me, look, you got to stay calm or you're going to not remember this very well, and I didn't stay calm. So, they had to put the whammy on me. But it's like to go through your own, like if you're hearing this and something triggers you, I tell the people listening, go through your own benchmarks, and dig into it a little bit. There might be a pattern here. The more you hear more experiencer stories, that begins to make some sense. So I'm just really enjoying it, you guys.
Well, thank you. I want to add something to what you just said because it's very profound. Is Whitley Strieber said how that he was being trained so he could be in their presence and not go into the freak out, right? And so there's the story of his upstate New York cabin where he knew they were in the living room downstairs and the bedroom was up in the loft, and eventually he started to come down the stairs and he would run back into bed. But eventually, over time, he grew comfortable enough that he would come down into the living room and sit in lotus opposite the being that was in meditation, and they would meditate together. So he says, I have arrived. Now I'm not freaking out. And that was what happened to me when they took me to 100,000 people. And just this last year, I had, an alien gray species variation to stand at my bedside for a long time, and we had this conversation. And I wasn't freaked out at all. I wasn't running. I didn't hide. But, of course, they don't, for some reason, like my husband doesn't come into the room. He's already up and working in the office down the other side of the house. But he doesn't come in during that whole time. I'm sitting there alone. So I'm like, well, come on in so I have a witness to this. But I'm having this full-on experience. Yeah, so one last thing about the benchmark. So when I went to see, and I'm not going to go into this show, but the dragon at the end of time in the underground base at Johnson Atoll, the Greys, the ones that were about between 4 or 5 feet tall, they were the delivery system, right? They picked me up and they returned me. But they made sure I didn't forget. And when I, they did paralyze me. The alarm went off, and I had to get up and go to work, and I was furious. I said, "You didn't make me forget. What's that about?" But I looked at that over the years, and it's just what you said. It's the benchmark. So that was like the one that said, "Oh yeah, you've had those other things, so now you got to look at it." Back to you, Sherry.
Oh. Yeah, it's interesting. I've had conversations also with them coming into my bedroom and just sitting by my bed, or he just kind of hovers above my bed. I don't know if he's levitating or what that is, but I just remember him being like, I'm sitting up and he's like, maybe he's sitting on the bed with me, but my partner is sleeping right next to me, and he's like floating, it seems like them above him. But I always like to think that I'm just conscious and very calm about it, but I think they really have me in an altered state is what they do. They are able to influence me, because I always freak out when I see them at first. I just do, my body responds with fear, and I can't seem to control that. Now, I've had the Draco, and I've talked about this before. I've had the Draco show up at my house numerous times. They don't scare me. Now, go figure. I don't know what that's about. I think, was it Barbara Lamb? Somebody told me that the reason she thought was because they're more closely related to us or something. But they're different looking. They're really different looking. But for some reason, I don't get that afraid when I see them. The tall whites, the same thing. It's mostly when they would have that Zeta suit with those big. Maybe it's because I was a little girl when I was a child, it freaked me out because they would come into my bedroom to get me, and it was pretty traumatizing because they send the little guys in and they're just very robotic, and they just come grab you and haul you away, and that's not easy to get over. So I think that's why I have the fear. But I'm still working on the fear, and I'm still telling them, I want to just have a face-to-face conscious meeting with you. I love it that I can communicate with you and that I can have recall and remember things, but I want to have come sit down like Whitley did, sit in my living room and we'll sit down and we'll have a nice conversation. But they keep telling me I'm not ready, and guess I'm not. I have to trust that. So
wow.
It's
same
weird.
Here. Please just come and have lunch with us, have tea
too.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Just come and talk to us. Well, we'll create this. We're working on some conferences. I've got to do some of the admin stuff and the back end stuff. But we've got to do these experiencer conferences with people. I know. Because I think that is the real disclosure. And not mix it up with all the other stuff. It gets lost. It gets lost.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Okay.
I think it would be great. I did that experiencers conference, so I didn't get to enjoy it as much as I wanted to because I wasn't doing well, but I love the experiencer conferences. Those are the ones that make sense to me. I don't think there's much new to be said by anybody investigating the past and picking up remnants of, studying the markings left by the ship and or trying to find more witnesses to a sighting or whatever. I mean, I think that's to me that's pretty dull stuff. I mean, I want to hear about people, the conversations they've had with the ETs they've been with, and what have you learned? The time you spent on the ship. What did you see and what did you experience? That's where we're going to get the insight into what's really going on with this. Although I think those of us who are part of the hybrid program, we have that awareness of what that's all about, which leads to the big picture, which is they're here because of humanity's ascension. I mean, because we're ready to graduate from the 3D school, and that's what they're here to assist with all that, I think. And they're here out of curiosity. So it's very interesting times right now on the planet, and I feel bad for those people who either don't believe in this or aren't interested enough or are too afraid to look at it. Maybe it would be the best way to put it, because it's a fascinating subject. Just so much to it, and we've only scratched the surface as far as understanding what's going on with it. So I'm looking forward to more.
And there are the solutions to what ails humanity and the earth. They have all the technologies. They have the cures. And that is not only disclosure, but it'll take us to a whole other way of being, which is more kind and loving. Whenever I see somebody that I know suffering from a disease or dying, and it's curable, I know it's curable because I'm so connected to the extraterrestrials. There's a part of me that just gets furious. It's like you killed your Lyme. Somebody is allowing them to die, and I think the humans die at a rate of about 100,000 people a day. 100,000 people a day die from things that are all curable, and we're all being murdered and indulging out Mr. Powers that be that are listening to this show, because it's time we stop murdering our human civilians, our citizens of the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's sad. It's to the point. I mean, now with talking about forced immunization, and all that. So much of that is poisoning our children. I mean, they're targeting our children. The whatever you want to call them, the dark forces, the controllers, whatever. They're actually targeting our children, because our children coming in now are the results of these hybrid programs, and they're our future. They're the ones who are going to turn the tide on this planet. But they know that. The controllers know that, and so they're going after them. And people just, I don't know. It's a crazy world. It's just crazy. It's just amazing how many people just look the other way or keep their eyes closed, or they're just so distracted that they don't see what's right in front of them. So it's frustrating. I have to admit, it frustrates me quite a bit. But
yeah, well, I guess maybe I'm in a small niche, but I see so many people waking up that
that's good.
Every day I get excited and feel hopeful, and realize that we're reaching critical mass, and that this information, I don't think there's any stopping it now. I was talking to what was her name? She made a new movie, Caroline Corey.
Oh,
and
yeah.
She says we've got this lower operating system, the matrix, right, and it seems to be dominating and controlling everything. But above that is a higher operating system with its other rules and laws of organization and structure, and that is overpowering. It's like a subroutine computer, right? So there's a little subroutine playing, which is Earth, and the life, birth, death, reincarnation cycle. But that's panning out and playing out, and it's to me, what I've been told or shown is that it'll be like the Berlin Wall. So you're old enough to understand the Berlin Wall, and our younger listeners don't get it, but the children of the 50s of World War II, that generation after, we were raised with the Berlin Wall. We were raised with the concept that the nukes are coming, drop and get under your desks at
under
school,
your
like that's really going to protect us, right?
I know it.
Or the fallout shelter in the basement that had windows, like that's going to protect us. But one day, the Berlin Wall kept a huge part of the population behind this wall in communism, forced communism. We were perceiving them as being, in a kind of a prison within the prison, and we were the free people, yada yada. But one day the wall came down. It was just one day, and by the end of the day, it was down. And so, counseling practice, I had so many people over the last 20, 30 years that said, I was behind the wall, I escaped the wall, I froze out in the streets of London, the whole concept of freedom and escaping from one to the other. So I think that's what's going to happen with this disclosure. One day, what I got is they're going to show everywhere at once. If it's everywhere at once, you're not going to be able to say, well, that's just your imagination over there in Europe or over there in Russia. No, they're everywhere at once. Everybody would go out of there and see them in the skies. So I said, well, bring that on now. We're ready. But again, on some level, we're not.
Break in on that thought right there.
Sure, break in on that thought.
I want to share something interesting. Yeah. My partner, Brett, was actually in the Army when the Berlin Wall came down, and he was a medic on the Czechoslovakian border of the wall, so it actually extended that far. And I said, well, what was it like? Because I remember it was a very uncertain time in the news. The whole turmoil about leading up to the Berlin Wall falling was are we going to be at war, over this? And he said, oh, my gosh, he says, we were scrambling, every other day on alert, and we didn't know if it was a drill or if it was the real thing. And then all of a sudden, the Berlin Wall fell down. So what was really interesting to me about that was how right up to the moment that the wall came down, like some kind of weird switch was thrown that, let's just do this, there was a lot of fear and a lot of, I guess, fear porn, a lot of speculation and fear and military uncertainty and all of that. And I think that's interesting because sometimes I guess the darkest before the dawn,
Right.
As I've monitored regular news, which I don't recommend to anybody, just saying, but as I've monitored more regular news kind of in the last month, I'm reminding myself this is not reality. It's like this is everybody's uncertainty, and we're sort of afraid of uncertainty, which is kind of funny. But a lot of so it could be up to that moment when the interior walls of our lack of knowledge and ignorance falls when it comes to that we live in a populated universe, which my guides call the realization of paradigm galactic. We're not alone in the universe, never been alone, and we live in a populated universe. Up to that moment, we might actually be it might be quite stressful in general. It might be actually a very dramatic lead up to the thing. And so keep that in mind as we seem to have some ramping up of things that might be just before something really amazing could happen. So, just remember fear is a relative thing. It's false evidence appearing real. And that, of course, if the powers that be are going to lose control, they're definitely going to be banging that drum, But I just thought it was an interesting historical note that he told me about.
Wonderful. So you were asking them questions. They said, let's see, it is time. I made a note about that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm writing the book. I'm writing the book.
Yeah. When you started it, you would come to and say, "What the hell?" and then
and wrote the book very quickly.
You were using Word.
Yeah. So I was in Arizona at the time that I was doing that. It was it had been everything orchestrated and happened very quickly in my life. My life came unraveled. Everything came undone. Went through a huge, big loss on everything during the recession, 2009, 2010, right into there. Lost my family and my business and my wealth, and lost everything. And so I was in Arizona with my dad, staying with him. My mom had died and my brother had died. My dad had Alzheimer's, and I was down there with him and just started writing the book. And it was an interesting time because I had a lot of communication and a lot of contact with my guides during that time, and I was very aware of it. And that's when I met my hybrid children. I remember asking if I could, because I was missing my family and I was just feeling alone. And then I thought of my hybrid children. I said, can I be around them for a while? Can I maybe see them? And it picked me up immediately and took me to some small planet where there were around 16 to 18 of my children were there. And it was hilarious because I was excited that I was going to be able to see them. And I don't know why. I was thinking that I was going to be meeting a bunch of 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. I don't know why I had it in my head. I didn't think about it because when they brought me there, they were all sitting on a 2-tier stone wall that was built into the side, into a hill. I don't know how to describe it, but it's kind of like when you go to Ireland a little bit, but there was but it was 2-tiered, so it was stone with grass growing on it. It was real pretty, and there was a lower level that some of the younger ones were sitting on, and then on the upper one some others. And the first one that stepped forward was a man who was in his 40s, and I was shocked. I was like, "This is my child," and I had to stop, and I was like, "Oh, of course, okay, of course I'd be that." I mean, I'm 60 years old or whatever I was at the time, and they'd been harvesting my eggs. Yeah, so that was shocking to me. But so there were, so they obviously had, had used the egg right away. But so I think they were, the youngest one was probably, I don't remember, maybe 10 or 11 maybe. But they were all mostly older young adults, older being in their 40s.
So what did they look like?
Oh, they looked radiant. That's what I remember about them. They had bright lights, they had very bright light. They were all very radiant, just a lot of light about them. Very, very pleasant.
Did they look like they came from you? They when I saw, they showed me one time a hybrid that was my husband's DNA and my DNA, my current husband. And they took it, so when I met him, I was 43. So I still had about 7-8 years of producing eggs, was still premenopause. And that was one of the first things they did, is they showed me my child, but they showed it at all ages. I was holding him as an infant, and then next thing I know, he's a toddler, and then he's eventually he's like you said, a young man, right? And I'm going, what? How? The time is an illusion of this dimension. So they were just showing me this child at all ages, but I could see. I go, oh yeah, I could see how that's how our child would look if we ever gave birth to one. It's got. I could see that's his DNA, and that's his feature, and that's my feature, and that's how our child would look. Did you see yourself within those children?
Not too many of them. There were a few girls there that resembled my daughters that I have, and so I saw it in them. But the first one that I met, the man, the oldest one that was there, when I think back on it, he had dark eyes and dark hair, and I was blonde and always blonde, but he reminded me of my nephew. I have a nephew who looks a lot like he looks. So So it depends on who they matched, who the partner was with. But it was interesting. It reminds me. I'll tell you this little side story. I don't think I've shared. I'm sharing stuff with you that I haven't talked to anybody about. I don't think I've. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't. I'm pretty sure I haven't said this to anybody. But I have a memory of when I got pregnant. They told me when I had to conceive my oldest daughter. That night, they said it was important that I conceive her that night, and I remember them being there, and I remember, it's in the book, how my husband came home after writing a final exam or something. He was exhausted, and I wouldn't let him, I wouldn't let him be. I pestered him till we had relations and had sex, and because I knew I was going to get pregnant that night, and and I remember feeling like I was being watched. I made him open the curtain or open the blind, and I said, there's somebody out there peeking in. I said, there's somebody watching us. I can feel it. Well, it was them, watching us, to make sure. But anyway, I remember them asking me, they asked me what sex I wanted my baby to be, and I said I wanted a girl. I got to choose both times, and I said I wanted a girl both times. And I remember them asking me, what would you like her to look like? And I said, I get to choose? I get to pick? And they said, within a certain, fair amount. You can. There's some leeway there, and you can choose what she looks like. And so I remember thinking about movie stars and models and that sort of thing. And then I thought, nah. And then I decided there was this girl I went to school with. I'm not going to say her name, but I went to school with this girl. I always thought she was so pretty. And I said, so I gave them her name, and I said I want her to look like, and I gave the name. Well, you know what? They picked me up, and do you know that we went to her house? And I had never been to her house. I knew where she lived, but I wasn't that close of friends with her. We went to her house and we picked her up. I just felt terrible about that because we went in and got her, and they took her, and they just took measurements of her face, and they did stuff with her, and then they put her back, and I felt kind of bad about that, but she wasn't traumatized, I don't think. Well, my daughter was born, and she just is almost a spitting image of this girl, and she even has this girl had in high school. I remember her when she was in the bathroom and she would be in combing her hair or something. She had a cowlick like right on the front of her, right, And she always cursed that. She's like, oh, I can't do anything with that. It just had a mind of its own. It was a cowlick, And I forgot about that, but I always thought that was cute, And do you know, my daughter has that same thing. She has that, and she did the same thing. She's like, oh, I hate this cowlick right on my forehead. I can't have bangs, and I can't have, yes. So I got that kind of input. I got to do that with, and I thought that was always so interesting. So I don't know if anybody else has ever had that experience where they did that, but my guys are really good to me.
They're good to you.
They're
well,
really good
my
to me.
My one girlfriend. There's other people that are kind of manipulated or they're directed into having sex with certain people, and so she was a full-on adult and she was working for this man, and they wanted her to have sex with this man who was probably not human. She said it was just I don't know. She described it and she said I knew he wasn't human, but he was temporarily her boss, so she got directed into this job as well. And she's, okay, I'll have sex with him, but I want to have, I don't know what she wanted, blue eyes, and I don't know. She put like a specific thing, as long as the kid comes out with this. So she didn't get the whole image, but the kid came out with the blue eyes that she wanted, dark hair and blue eyes, something. So you got what you wanted.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and my daughter has blue eyes, and her dad and I have both brown eyes. But yeah, she has bright, piercing blue eyes. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. I never talked about it. It's one of those little memories I have that I think I pull that out and look at that every now and then. I'd be like, did that really happen? But I could go to that house where she grew up, that girl, and I could tell you, I know right where her bedroom is and her house. I remember going there because they took me with them when we went to pick her up. So it was interesting. I didn't have that with my youngest. My youngest daughter was not in the program, and she's not a part of that. But they did, however, intervene because she was born prematurely. She was born when I was just barely 6 months along, and so she was not given any chance of survival. Well, they gave her a less than 5% chance of survival, and they said, you don't want her to survive. Yeah, and they said, you don't want her to survive. You don't want her to survive anyway. She's going to be so, she's going to be so messed up. She's not going to have a normal life. Well, she survived and she thrived and she's fine. She's got a few, maybe she has a fight or flight kind of a thing with her central nervous system. Yeah, but other than that, she's fine. She's healthy. She'd be deaf. She'd be blind. She'd be disabled. She'd be all kinds of things because she died at one point after she was in the hospital for over a month, and at one point she did die for a while, and it took them a long time to revive her, and she was gone too long. And they told me that because of, if nothing else, because of that, she wouldn't be normal. But she is. I mean, there were lots of miracles that happened around that. Yeah.
So they're very supportive of you and your desires, and they're protective, and they that's very much. That's what we're getting from a lot of people.
Yeah, very much. They I talk in the book a little bit about how there came that time when I was so distraught. They were coming around so much. That would have been in the late 1980s, 87, 88, 89, 90. Right into there, I had a period of intense activity with them. They were training me for this time, what they call the Great Earth Changes. So they were teaching me things, and they were teaching me about that, and they just spent a lot of time with me. They were coming 3 or 4 times a week for me, and they were sometimes coming twice a day. So I had lots of activity. Yeah, it was too much. It really was too much. They just about made me. I tried to even take myself out, and they wouldn't. I took my car and I was going to, crash it, and they wouldn't let me do that. And so finally, after I did that, he said to me, "Sherry, what can we do to help bring you peace," or something like that? He asked, "What can we do to make this easier?" And I said, "I feel so alone." And I said, "I feel like I'm crazy with all this." And I said, I have this group, this meditation group that they had actually channeled. This group for a couple of years before I joined the group, there was a person who channeled, and they had channeled the message that I would be joining their group and that they should they should welcome me and they should, help me to understand what was happening. And so they were a big support for me. But I asked at that time if they could show themselves to every member of that group, and there were over a dozen people in that group, and they did. They showed themselves. They showed everybody in the group except for one person that had a sighting. And so they've shown themselves to a lot of my friends, and it just helps me to not feel so isolated with it, and not feel so crazy. So they've been good.
Oh, that's wonderful. I wish they would do that more.
Yeah,
Help
I know.
everybody.
Yeah. Yeah,
well, we've got about a little bit, around a half hour left, and I wanted to cover what's going on now. I know we'll go back and do some more of your historical stuff on future shows. I like slowing it down. We get a little bit more details, and thank you for being patient like that and going. I mean, there's no rush, right? We're getting other aspects of the story that won't emerge if we just, because that whole thing that in the beginning when we slowed it down, it's like, oh, wow, I'm glad we slowed it down. We have all these wonderful details. So I'd like to look at the last half hour is you said that they were training you for these times. And I've had similar thoughts about these times. I'll just add this and then I'll pass the talking stick back to you. But one of the things that I've learned from, I'm going to be 64 on my birthday in a month, on February 6th, is that these times are changing. It's like timelines, and that we are the chooser, and the apocalyptic timelines are not set in stone, that we as a chooser can decide which, it's like picking a lane on a big, giant freeway. Which lane do you want to, go down as your road of life? And those who want to go into apocalypso, that'll be perfect for them because that's what they want on some level or need to experience. However, at this point, it seems like that's not necessary for anyone. Right. But at one point when I was a child and being conditioned by my religious programming, was like, oh yeah, we're all gonna die and have Armageddon, and it is. Mm-hmm. So anyway, back to you. What are your thoughts about these times?
Well, what they told me, they did spend those years with me, a lot of time with them, and it was a crash course on what they call the Great Earth Changes that were coming up, and I don't have a huge amount of information, and I don't think I have any new information. It basically is what it is. That when I volunteered to come onto planet Earth, it was in the year of 1947. I was born in 1950, but I volunteered in 1947 because I remember my pre-birth life, and I trained and I spent a lot of time around the Earth, getting prepared because I had not been in this dense of a form that I was aware of anyway. And so it was going to be a new experience for me. At that time, coming onto the planet, the timeline showed that most likely planet Earth had decided to take the next opportunity for ascension, which was due to come up around the year 2011, 2012. And she was going to go, as she said, with or without her children. She couldn't wait any longer because she knew that she would be destroyed if she didn't. And so that decision had been made, and it was, how can we awaken Earth? I mean, it had been this long plan of sending in volunteers, but it really started in earnest in around 1949, 1950, after the atomic bomb was dropped. So I was one of them that came in along with millions of others, and we came in pretty much in waves, kind of the way that Dolores Cannon and Susie, I forget her name, Hansen, talk about, the way they talk about it. And that's what they told me too, is that, I had the idea, I knew that I was a participant in a program, and then I pretty much started calling myself a volunteer because that just made more sense. And so the frequency on the planet had to come up higher, and that's what we endeavored to do. And the plan is working. It's working quite well. And I think that those who have chosen, and that's what they trained me and many others for. They called it being a light reader. So in 1990, it would have been, I think, or late 1989, they spent time with me teaching me to look at a person and know where their light measurement was, basically your frequency. And they explained that every soul on the planet would be given a chance to make a decision if they wanted to ascend with Mother Earth, or if they would be going to another parallel, or whatever world resonates with them, another experience on it. But planet Earth was definitely going to move into the higher frequencies. And I didn't know what any of that meant. It didn't make any sense to me. But when the time came to do this light reading work, what they told me they did is they suspended time for 3 days and 3 nights. And I kind of, now I'm starting to remember it a little bit, which is how it works, But I remember you would meet with all these different souls. You would meet on a soul level, and the soul would make the decision because it's going to be what it's going to be. But we met with them back in, I think it was 2009. So we still had some years before the actual event occurs, and it's an ongoing event, but before the decision is locked in, is the way they put it. You have to, at some point you have to lock in, and you go wherever you go based on what your resonance is. So as I met, it's kind of like we were kind of like counseling them, because I would meet with somebody and I would say, okay, you're and this was true of so many that I met with, and it was that their frequency was right at the line. They weren't quite there yet. They just weren't there, but they were close. And there were so many of them that were like that. And I would say to them, do you want to make a run for it? And many of them, most of them said yes. And what that meant was that they had between that date, that time in 2009 when we did this light reading, and when the ascension was going to occur, which was, we all thought it was going to be 2012, but it got delayed, and that's so that more of them could make the mark. So if they said, yes, we're going to try to make a run for it, we're going to try to awaken, the soul would decide we're going to try to awaken enough and get our frequency up. So I would tell them, I tell people, if after the year 2009, if your life went to hell in a handbasket, or you had huge changes in your life, if all of a sudden you got this urge to go on this spiritual path, whatever it is, I call it being poked with a stick, because for many of us on the planet, we awaken through pain. And so if your soul, if you made the decision to make a run for it so that you could ascend with planet Earth when the time came, odds are that you faced a lot of challenges, because that's, how we awaken is we're brought to our knees and we're forced to surrender, give up our will, and look and turn inward eventually to look for the answers, to seek, why is this happening? Why, I've tried to live a good life. Why am I suffering? Why is this happening to me? And kind of a forced awakening. And that's what so many people are dealing with at this time. So when I was first taught about this, I think that the number they told me was 17%. Only 17% of the population was at a frequency where they would be able to ascend with planet Earth at that time, and that would have been like right around 1990. I don't know what the number is now, but it's considerably more. I hope, I believe, I want to believe that it is, because I think a lot of people are awakening. And I think, we had the delay on the awakening, and I think part of it was because the dark forces were fighting back more than what was anticipated, but actually it's okay, because it gives humanity even more time to come into, to wake up. So that's my take on it.
Well, Karen worked with the Linkage Institute and A.R. Borden, and a lot of people will kind of fill that in. I'll let Karen talk about and what they did with the incoming apocalypso timeline we were on, coming into 2012, and that great decision of where you go that you've got trying to bolt to get on board. Apparently there was intervention, so this is correlating. Karen, do you know what I'm talking about? Do you want to share?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I totally know. Yeah, just to give you kind of what's happened is I think there's been a significant change in the people that are working with that information-based and energy, to where I think it was very, like in the early days with A.R. Borden and the Life Physics Group, it was like a think tank of the government, of the covert government, concerned about Nibiru coming in and its effects, concerned about something else called the Animus coming in, which is like an AI type of invasion. And I think it has connections to other projects. But we lost A.R. Borden to corporeal existence as we know it in 2013. However, everybody who kind of knew of him or knew him are pretty convinced that he's not exactly dead in that regard, more like he's in another dimensional. And so what I sort of observe for myself and for other people is that this has moved very much into an etheric way and into each individual person's path. And what you were saying, Sherry, was so right on. And they were looking at what's that tipping point for humanity to be ready. And even if we were at 3%, it was more hopeful than 0, And right. So I think, and I think they're very much working with us at a deep level, to where, the powers that be don't know this, but like, for instance, 9/11 actually catalyzed people to wake up and go, wait, right. What the heck's going on? And and I know this observationally because I'm a second-generation conspiracy theorist. My dad belonged to the John Birch Society, was all about the commies, but the Federal Reserve, and very much about the monetary system and the political system. But I mean, I don't know, if you talked about these things in at a casual gathering, people would start to hand you the tinfoil to make your hat, I mean, it was very much, of course, definitely UFOs and all that, and he didn't get into that, and I did. But it was a situation where absolutely this is the thing that's I think is happening, is that we. A lot of people are afraid of the singularity and transhumanism, and I've become very excited because humans are going to sort of transition themselves. It's not so much about, are we going to add a bunch of AI and are we going to add a bunch, which I think is kind of a consciousness too. Are we going to add a bunch of, be like the Borg with a bunch of, attachments, Swiss Army knife people, right? Or are we going to reach into the human potential? And I think that's part of why the DNA is of great interest at this juncture, because it's really in our DNA is not just the two strands that they see under a microscope, but it's actually quite a bit more to it, with energy strands that's activating. And when we have these conversations, we're activating each other, and it's up-leveling. And I think A.R. Borden started off maybe in his early career more into the, almost even human experimentation, or kind of the dark things that were going on. And I think he had a turnabout in his spirit to say, we've got to spread the news on this. And so he came out from those groups and contacted a bunch of us individually and was trying to share his information. But that was kind of what it was about, is what are we exactly as human beings? Are we just human, just being human? Or are we potentially something so much greater? And it's definitely connected to Mother Earth, which I've learned to look at the heavenly hosts, like in the Bible, as all the stars as being consciousnesses, and all the planets being consciousnesses that have become, 3D type of environments for all of these different species to live in and on. And I call Gaia, our Mother Earth, the hostess with the mostest, because she's a really amazing being. And, she's, it's got to be really heavy to carry the intentions and thoughts of beings that actually do harm to all of us, to the environment, and to all the other creatures. And, she's ready to go. The delay is very interesting to me, because I was picking that up too, Sherry, that 2012 was a very pivotal year, but it definitely we weren't quite there. I don't think I was. And 2009 was a big year for me. That's when I started doing extensive automatic writing to be trained. You know, they were training me about now. I didn't understand most of it until now. I see what they're talking about these times and these days. And I know so many people have that sense of mission. And man, I had a sense of mission when I was 5. When I came in. And so I think you're right on. I think that's cool that you can work with people and communicate, for them to up level their energy, because and the hell in the handbasket thing. Oh, totally. I that 2009. I had a hard road the whole time because I was a family caregiver. But boy, 2009 was oh man. And when they took me on one abduction, basically part of the reason why I had a hard time remembering it was I pitched a fit like a 2-year-old. I said, "Do not send me back. I do not want to go back." I sort of visioned myself throwing myself on the floor and crying, and it was awful because I was in a really bad situation. But I told them, and they did that to me too. What do you need to be happy and to make it through the mission? And I needed to be with a partner and have a stable home life. That was really important for me. And so I have that now, and I'm shocked, But it's just made me galvanize towards the mission. It's raised my energy level up to now also have a community, of people that I can talk to. I hope that's happening for more and more people, because we have been isolated, so many of us.
Right.
And we're finding each other, and that's going to accelerate everything. So I just want to tell you, I have so enjoyed hearing your story. It's just got me going.
Super.
So we're running out of time. I want to give you most of the remaining time. I just want to add that one of the things that I was aware of about this AR board is they did a time experiment. This is many different species. It was the Anunnaki. He was in touch with the Anunnaki, and they had these ongoing meetings. I don't know if it was once a year or once every quarter or whatever, but there was the meeting minutes that I got a hold of, and it said who were the beings that were there, and even some particular ones like Enki, Enlil, that type of thing. And they made a decision to blink us in and out of time-space so that the Nibiru would not have that effect of, the shift, right? So that was so they actually did. So it's fascinating to read these minutes. So I'll try to put the link on the website for today's show. But they blinked us in and out, and they created this alternative, which we're experiencing now. But people are still seeing Nibiru, but it's going out. It no longer has an effect on us. It's going outbound because they shifted the timeline. So
is that right?
Anyway,
okay.
Yeah, that's some people go, what's going on? What is it going to do? It's no, it's already been changed. According to this meeting that happened in 2011, before 2012, they made the decision, and so when the right time when it came through at a certain point, they just went boop, boop, and we were all the way, and then it happened,
Janet,
and we're back.
When was that meeting? Because a friend of mine and I got picked up in November, early November. I think it was November 7th or somewhere into there. A big ship came up the valley and picked us up, and we were on the ship for about 90 minutes, and there was a big meeting. I know that much. I remember consciously going onto the ship and having to go through a sanitizing process, which I'd never had to do that before. They put me through some chamber where they and I was kind of indignant about what's that all about? I'm not a bug. And they said, but your planet is so toxic now and so poisonous that we have to sanitize you before you can come on the ship. And I was like, oh my God. So, but we had a meeting on there, and you know that I cannot. And I went to even talk to Bashar because I needed to find out, because I was so depressed after that meeting on the ship. All I remember is sitting at a council, and there being every different species you can imagine on the ship, and we sat in a semicircle, like a half circle. All of us did, and we talked, and we had to and we communicated through some kind of a device or something. And there was a discussion about it, and I remember something about the ascension being delayed, and there was they used the word hijack. They said that we can't let the ascension be hijacked like it has in the past. And so these are the measures we're going to take, and it's going to be delayed. And I was so depressed about it afterwards, but I wanted to get more details about it. It almost sounds like the meeting that you're talking about.
Right, and I think they had the one meeting we had was January of it was early in the year, but they had this agenda, and they didn't know it was going to work or not. They just didn't know, but they didn't want us to go through the apocalypse and the total disintegration of the structure, because this is high civilization. I mean, we have a lot of very good things here, and it wasn't time. Most people weren't ready. But what you were saying, I think what they needed was all the people that were trained to come together for this, the subsequent meetings, because that was November. So, by December 2012, they actually did the experiment. So that makes sense that you were born for that meeting, and you're there because you're one of the trained people, and you're trained because you're very psychic and intuitive, and they wanted to pull all that energy together to make it happen to a positive outcome. So I think you were just part of that experiment. So sorry you felt depressed, but I've had people approach us. Yes, or what?
I actually know a lot about this story, but you and I have never really gotten into it because it was connected with Michael Lee Hill and other people who we've come out with it, but I haven't told you, sometimes we have to have another discussion where I go into at least a part of the experiment I and some others were involved in, and then what happened, the contact and visualization that happened to me during the process. We haven't really gone in deep with that just for different reasons. Maybe it's time now. I don't know. But let's do that sometime.
I think it is. Okay, so this is what we're doing. We're piecing together our parts, and we are going to run out. We've got 10 minutes left, so I don't want to go into it extensively. But, we had a gentleman approach us, and they wanted to pull together all these people like ourselves that are very psychic, intuitive, and they were going to take out Saddam Hussein. This was back in 1998 or something like that. And my husband said, no, I'm not going to kill anybody. So, no, you can't use me. But we know that they sometimes come together and they try to get us, and we are dispersed all over the planet, but they can literally come to your door, and they'll say, oh, your friend Joe sent me, right? So you open the door, you go, yeah, what's up? But it's really this higher level organization that exists around the planet, and we're all connected.
Right.
So when I walked on Johnston Atoll in December of 95, this guy came over to me and said, welcome to a joint UFO ET United States military base. And I went, what? Really? So they knew who I was. They knew. We're in a database somewhere. They know who we are.
I know.
Yeah. So, wow. Well, Karen, we'll plan that. We'll book, and you're welcome to come back, Sherry, and we can reveal some of the stuff that A.R. Borden and Linkage Institute was doing, and then now he's kind of either dead or in a different dimension or something, not able to actively impart. But he was walking, and a lot of people have met this mysterious A.R. Borden, which is kind of like what Corey Good is saying, that there are these ongoing meetings that are happening. And I've been in many meetings, and there's humans and ETs, and so have you. So we could do a whole show on people that have been to these meetings. Yeah.
I know. It's so interesting, isn't it? It just is. It's so interesting. And for me, I remember, my memory is starting to piece together little pieces, and it's just coming to the surface more and more. So I'm finding it all very fascinating. It's bigger than what I thought. I never expected it to become this, when I first learned about my abduction experiences, which I don't like to call them that, but little by little, you realize, oh, I'm part of the hybrid program. What does that mean? And then pretty soon you realize, oh, I'm part of the, the workers, the light workers for the ascension. Oh, what does that mean? And it's fascinating. It's just very fascinating. It's not been a dull life by any means, but it's been a strange life. It's weird to live a life where you have this whole other thing going on, and you only have bits and pieces of it, and you try to put it together as best you can. So fascinating.
Yeah. So
fascinating.
no, don't talk to me now. So how do you? Oh shoot. Sorry. How do you handle that? Do you have a support system now in your life? Do you have people that you can talk to?
I don't really have the need to talk too much. The little bit that I do talk, I talk to my partner Jim, because he was totally didn't know anything about any of this. He was very innocent, but they acclimated him to it, is the way they put it. He had his own encounters and he had his own experiences after he met me. We've been together 5.5 years, and we were just talking. Yeah, we've been talking. We were talking last week or 2 weeks ago about how, we haven't seen anybody around. We haven't had any visitors or anything for a while, and we haven't had much happening, which is good. It's good because the last stuff that I had happen was not so positive, but it's still, we kind of miss having the activity around the house. And I'm not sure, I don't know if they're busy with other stuff, but we haven't even seen a UFO even, we just haven't had anything happen for a while. So we're kind of feeling left out of the loop a little bit, kind of ignored.
Okay, guys, go visit Sherry. She wants you to come and say hi.
Yeah, it's okay. But yeah, it's been quiet. It's been quiet lately, and maybe it's just because I just need the downtime. I need to recover. I mean, they've been coming in and working on my body and doing some healing stuff and all that, which I'm very appreciative of. But as far as anything huge other than that happening, it's been pretty quiet. But it's interesting.
I'm sure they'll come see you now that you've asked them to.
Yeah.
Especially on radio. So be prepared. I get a whole level of contact now. I go to other planets. It appears like I have a nighttime job. Oh, no, we're going to run out in just a few minutes here. But anyway, we'll go into that in the future. People have simultaneous lives. So I have this other life I go to, and I go to these cities, and I know those cities like I know, my hometown here. And I go, oh, yeah, here's where I work, and here's where I live. And it's just really weird. Yeah. And sometimes it's on ship, and there's Elizabeth April. She goes, yeah, when I'm on ship, I'm the commander. When I'm here, I'm just a little girl. We have all these different roles in our simultaneous lives. So, okay, so we have just a couple of minutes, and I would like you to tell people about your book and your websites and all that good stuff.
Okay. Well, the book is The Forgotten Promise. And the website, my poor neglected website, I put it up and I never touched it after since. But it's but I do have a blog. I'm going to try to get more active on my blog, but it's theforgottenpromise.net, and you can either correspond with me through that or read the blog or order a book. But the book's available on Amazon or on Kindle or Barnes & Noble, any place books are sold. So that's it in a nutshell. And I'm on Facebook, of course, too. So
wonderful. Are you going to be presenting this year at any workshops or conferences?
I don't know. I felt so terrible backing out of contact at the last minute. I did it like 2 weeks, and I was so sure I was going to get strong and be able to go. I don't know. My health is definitely better, but I'm just feeling like I might need some downtime. I'm just not sure yet. I haven't accepted anything. Yeah, I know.
We'll play it by ear.
Well, I've been asked to go to Australia, and I'd love to do that and do a tour over there. So maybe that's where I'll go. But I don't know.
That.
Yeah. We'll see.
Where are you living? Not to give your street address. What part of the world are you in right now?
Right now, I'm in down in the Tucson area in Arizona.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll create something close by, so it wouldn't be so hard for you to come and poke your head in.
Well, I'll be going back.
I would love to see you again. Just
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll be going back to Wisconsin, before spring, but I'm down here for part of the winter. Yeah. I was directed to come down here. I mean, that's an interesting story too. I was told very forcefully to come down here. I'm waiting to see why. I think it's just for my healing. It's been good for my healing. So I was sent down here, and they came up with a pretty interesting way to get me the money, so I was able to do it, take off, because I work full-time. I have 2 full-time jobs I work, or try to work. But, so I'm down here, for a few months, and really good. I'm just being lazy. It feels good to do that.
Good to be lazy.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Sherry, so much for coming on today's show. And Karen, thank you for coming and hanging out with us and helping us all connect the pieces of this giant puzzle. Eventually we'll get the whole thing together where we go, oh, my God, look at that.
Yeah, that was interesting. I enjoyed that. It's not your typical talk. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I like to do unusual talk. So we will have you back again, and I'm going to play our exit music because we're running out of time. So Thank you so much, everybody, and much love and blessings, and aloha.
Have you heard? Metro by T-Mobile now includes Amazon Prime. Yes, enjoy the best of shopping and entertainment, movies, TV shows, music, free shipping, and much more. All included for just $40 per line for 3 lines. All on the T-Mobile network. Discover the smarter way. Metro by T-Mobile. That's genius. One offer per account. Offer subject to change. $12.99 per month value. Offer valid for new Amazon Prime members. Metro customers may notice reduced speeds versus some T-Mobile customers. Video at 480p. Capable device required. See store for details and terms and conditions.